With the first pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select Caleb Williams, quarterback, Southern California. The Washington Commanders select Jaden Daniels, quarterback, LSU. The New England Patriots select Drake May, quarterback, North Carolina. With the 8th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Atlanta Falcons select Michael Penix Jr.
Well, there it is.
Quarterback, Washington.
The Minnesota Vikings select
J.J. McCarthy,
quarterback, Michigan.
The Denver Broncos select Bo Nix.
There it is.
Quarterback, Oregon.
6 for 12. 6 quarterbacks in the first dozen picks.
To quote Rambo, they're all gone, sir.
Prior to tonight, 7 offensive players to start the draft before we saw our first defensive player taken was the record, and we have doubled it. 14. That record may never be broken, and you'd have to say 6 quarterbacks in the first 12 picks is something that will never be broken as well.
Woo-wee. From the Chris Wessling Podcast Studio, it's Around the NFL. The 2024 NFL Draft is underway, and we are through one round. And tonight, we are here to recap all of the madness. And, oh my goodness, was it mad? Dan Hanzus here, Gregg Rosenthal, Marc Sessler, you heard it there, the face, Rich Eisen, NFL Network coverage of the big day from Detroit, where there were 275,000 people there. Is that a real number?
It's outrageous.
We believe that?
So, they had to stop letting people in an hour before the draft.
Is that possible? 275? Anyway, that breaks the all-time day one draft record. That's Mark, it was your era of pro wrestling. The old Pontiac Silverdome, they packed 93K in for WrestleMania 3 when Hogan body slammed Andre the Giant.
I do recall that actual event.
So Detroit goes big, and they did it again. And yes, 6 quarterbacks go in the first 12 picks. And draft record, 7 wide receivers go in the first round. The offensive linemen, also a heralded group, wiped out in the first round. So, and Gregg Rosenthal, as you heard, 14 offensive players go off the board before the first defensive player. So, I mean, we talked about these things and these the way it seemed to be shaping up, but it never goes that extreme. So this has been the draft of extremes so far.
I woke up this morning and I was so excited for this draft in a way, and I thought, like, is this just because the Patriots have the number 3 overall pick, or it really does seem like the most intriguing draft.
A lot of juice.
Like a lot of juice. And then for it to deliver like that, another record 23 offensive players in the first. And at least speaking for myself, I'm basic when it comes to the draft. I am more interested in the skill position players. Of course, offensive players includes all those tackles coming off the board, but I kept getting flashbacks, especially when Bo Nix got picked, back to 2011, which to me was one of the most exciting drafts. 2004 was another one. And in 2011 was the one where I believe 5 quarterbacks went in the first round. Maybe it was 4, and then it was Kaepernick and Dalton and Carr early in the second 2, and it was just like 6 quarterbacks very early. This was like that, except on mescaline or something, with Bo Nix going 12th and it going that fast.
Yeah, I mean, to have 6 go and the Raiders, for instance, not be a team that takes one of them, it speaks to the fact that a lot of teams had deep quarterback needs, and there's risk there for sure. But I would look at the 14 consecutive players that threw me on offense, because I thought at some point you're gonna get your Dallas Turner or Verse or someone in there, but nothing. I don't find the rest of it that surprising. For a month plus 2 months, we've been talking about huge amount of quarterbacks go, best wide receiver class we've seen in ages, and a great tackle class. Our offensive line class.
It's where they go, and it's the aftershocks. And the place everyone thought defense was going to go was Atlanta. I know we're going to get to all the picks, but it is these little aftershocks, and it's the little reports afterwards. And you mentioned it. I think it was a perfect storm. All these teams, and Daniel Jeremiah pointed out, needed offense, and a lot of them needed quarterbacks. Our guy, James Palmer, reported after the draft that Seahawks, Saints, and Raiders were all trying to get up for Penix, and that's one of the reasons why Atlanta didn't feel like they could move back at all. That
we had
was like
mentioned Seattle. in the
that many
last
teams
couple weeks.
were in on quarterbacks.
Who's
that
we?
Many didn't even get it. Mark.
Mark, just say I did. It's okay.
Well, because I'll say we
as a
because
show.
it's it's just information that was out there. I didn't talk directly
Well, you
to
said
John
you
Schneider.
said it, and then actually he dismissed it.
Yes, he dismissed
So
it.
don't
That I don't
do
want
royal we. Say I said that, and Greg, you dismissed
That's how the show works.
I said second round.
Take your glory lap, Marc Sessler.
I don't know.
And remember,
I don't know.
Lance Zierlein, love the guy.
Yeah.
He hung up the phone when you suggested Michael Penix could go early in the first round. I think we should start there, and we're going to get to the top of the first round, the very tippy top, which went chalky, but still important for obvious reasons. But I think in all my years here with this company, and that's a while now, I've never been more confounded and stunned by a pick like the Atlanta Falcons, fresh off giving a massive contract to a 36-year-old Kirk Cousins, finally, once and for all, addressing the quarterback position that has hexed them since Matt Ryan got old and then left and eventually retired last week. To take Michael Penix Jr., 8th overall, is an absolute stunner. And it's a stunner to obviously everyone that yes, I agree, Greg. Everyone that has been following this process, obviously the Falcons weren't going to take a quarterback. It makes no sense. I want somebody to make sense of it to me. Is there anyone in this room that can help me and other people, like many Falcons fans, I presume, absolutely Kirk Cousins, because we're already hearing reports that he was really stunned by the news and was made aware of their decision-making minutes before it happened. Why?
I have my questions about Michael Penix as a prospect. I have been trying to lead the take your quarterbacks as much as possible. You can't take quarterbacks too much, too high, too many resources. Always defending the Patriots when they would take a second-round pick on a backup. Defending the Packers when they took Jordan Love, which a pick that got made fun of for multiple years, by the way, after they did it. And this one stunned me because Penix didn't seem like that level of a prospect, but they obviously believe in him. And then you think about the Cousins contract, and here's how it makes sense, Dan. It's a 2-year contract.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it. That it's a 2-year contract. Penix is being signed for a 5-year contract, and they said afterwards, they being Raheem Morris, we won't be picking this high with the guy that we have in Kirk Cousins, trying to pick up his guy. We don't want to be picking up here anymore. They plan to be a very good team starting right now, and they want to get their quarterback of the future in the building right now. And I don't think it's crazy. First of all, Kirk Cousins is coming off a torn Achilles. That's like a little under the radar.
Greg,
part
4
of it.
years, $180 million.
But it's a 2-year contract.
100 guaranteed. 2-year contract. You had
it's
made
all guaranteed.
a $100 million guarantee to that man to be your quarterback.
So, but it's all in the first 2 years. They have $10 million in the third year. And if he's great, then that's great. Then you have your quarterback solution. And you have Kirk Cousins and you have someone behind. I don't think it's that crazy, especially when half the picks bust in the top 10 anyways. Like, people act like it's so crazy to like invest in a pick you might not use when a lot of the picks don't work.
I agree with you. I do understand,
You
like,
guys
if
are
you're the
nuts.
Sure, maybe, and I get that there's a Falcons fan sitting out there thinking we could have taken Roma Dunze, we could have taken the best pass rusher. That's fine, and that's not incorrect thinking in terms of how the draft works and how people respond. But Penix is the perfect guy to slow cook behind Cousins for a year plus. I don't hate the idea, and if he is what some people think he can be, I think this says a lot about Arthur Blank, who has been in a quarterback wilderness since they annoyed Matt Ryan by chasing after Deshaun Watson and lost Matt Ryan, and it's been an abyss since. And I think it's planning for the future. People, when you draft someone in the top 10, people want someone who will start and affect games right away. And I think that's where the disappointment could come from, especially when you're going to track and see how some of these other players perform. But we don't exactly know what Kirk Cousins is at this point. And it is really only a 2-year situation. And you can point to Patrick Mahomes. You can point to Aaron Rodgers. You can point to Jordan Love as guys that you bring in that sit for a while and then they shine. And I think Penix is a good candidate to benefit from that.
Now, let's point out, those are good examples. but Patrick Mahomes is arguably the greatest quarterback ever. Jordan Love coming off obviously a big year. But in general, this is not really how the league operates anymore. When you take a quarterback, and especially if you take him this high, he's expected to play, and that doesn't mean he should, and that doesn't mean that's a bad pick. The reason my thinking is, if you really love this guy, Michael Penix,
They do.
draft him. But don't sign Kirk Cousins. Or
That was
sign
months
Kirk
ago,
Cousins. It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, I mean, but like I think the thing is the offseason happens in waves and in chapters. And yes, you can say these two things shouldn't have happened to the same team in the same offseason. But a year from now, 6 months from now, if Kirk Cousins is injured, like this looks great. And
So
I
you
think
hedged your bets on Cousins.
Well,
But
no,
you didn't
no,
really
Cousins,
because you paid
is
him like a
short-term-
superstar.
But Cousins is a short-term veteran solution at quarterback.
Let me tell you this also.
It
Michael
was 10
Penix
years ago, I'd
Jr.
have a problem.
is turning 24 in 2 weeks.
I think that's a good point.
So that is also so now, like, unless Cousins is a disaster, an injury-riddled disaster, which is possible, he's not even touching the field now as he's edging into his late 20s. I just don't. It doesn't make sense to me.
It's weird.
Here's the thing: when you do invest, we could talk about all this thing like it's not a long-term signing, but it was a major signing for this organization. And when you invest that much in a player like Cousins, you're expecting him to be there for 2 years at least. And then if he's playing at a high level, maybe beyond that, okay? And then what you do, like my team, the Jets, like you need to, with this window that you just opened with Kirk Cousins, you got to build around him right now. And you have a chance to bring in the guy that goes off next off the board, Rome Odunze. Like that would have been a very logical move for them. Now, does Michael Penix Jr. turn into a stud? Maybe. But here's the other thing. He is a very raw prospect, and it's a total
Right.
And why, at the very least, Greg, my last point on this, then I'll shut up.
No, I think this is
Move back.
fascinating.
Move back.
Well, I don't think they could, based
And
on
then
that
live
James
with it.
Palmer
If he's not
reporting.
there, it's not like you're left holding the bag. You still have Kirk Cousins in the building. And this, you could take a gambit and say, maybe we can make it work out. It was overly aggressive, and I think it speaks to a lot organizationally in the last few years. I don't think they know what they're doing ultimately.
Well, I disagree. Everyone's saying, "Oh, this is a ready-made team." I don't think they're there yet. But you're saying you got to hit this window right now. It's like I want to applaud teams that value the quarterback position correctly. The reason they're making all this money is because it's worth so much more than the rest. So I don't think you can invest too much in the position. And the idea that like we want to set our franchise up for 8 years, for 10 years, to be good at the moment that Kirk Cousins inevitably starts to decline. He's not going to be a great player at 38. He might not be a great player this year at 36. That's another conversation. And so you try to set up a situation, and Raheem Morris said it. He said, we took note of the Green Bay model. So they were looking at that. It does make you wonder, and you were talking about
But it's a different situation, Greg. Aaron Rodgers is a franchise legend that was there forever.
Sure.
Whereas Kirk Cousins, someone they sought out 2 months ago.
The point is, though, I don't think it's crazy, and I know the Patriots didn't use a first-round pick, but they used multiple seconds to back up Brady. Like, the position is just so valuable that you almost can't spend too many resources on it. I have some issues just with Penix as a prospect. Seems very divisive, not incredibly accurate, like a great arm, an old-school quarterback, kind of like Kirk Cousins is in a way, but more like a Joe Flacco type of model.
That was Daniel Jeremiah's comp
Right,
for him.
and I totally see that when you watch him. Like, he gets super hot. He's a big-time arm. He's a pocket passer. Is he going to be the player? I don't know, but the process, I kind of like it. And you mentioned the age. A couple people hit me up on Twitter with that too. It's like, well, but you're thinking about the next 7 or 8 years. What's wrong with a quarterback coming in when he's 26 years old? Like, you're thinking about a guy that's going to try to last for a while. And I actually like the Atlanta Falcons thinking long-term, thinking a little differently process-wise. I just hope Penix is a good enough player to make them look smart.
Right. You also
Well, and
need him to hit the ground running like Jordan Love. And so, like,
Wait, but
he
that's
has
the
to be a
thing.
polished player when he gets there, or
Wait,
you
but
lose
Jordan
the
Love was as raw as it gets, and he looked
right. But I'm
totally
saying,
unready for multiple
you
years.
need him. That's hard to do. What the Packers have done, and they've proven it now over 25 years. They know how to do this. The Falcons saying we want to be like the Packers with this. you need Penix not only now to likely sit for 2 years. When he enters the fray, he needs to immediately be a difference maker. And if he's not, if it takes him a couple of years, guess what? His rookie deal's almost over.
Well, and it's also like, 65% of other draft picks in the first round that don't work. I mean, it's like I don't have a problem with this. And this is another outlier scenario, but it reminds me a little bit of when the Cowboys under Jimmy Johnson drafted Troy Aikman. And, terrible first season. Team was terrible. The next year, they go out, Jimmy Johnson turns around and drafts Steve Walsh, his former college quarterback, totally agitated Troy Aikman.
Who was his guy, Jimmy Johnson's guy. He wanted Walsh to win that job.
Right. But then they turned around and they had 2 quarterbacks. Troy Aikman's developing. The team's getting better. They turn around and traded Steve Walsh, who really never did anything as a pro, for a lot. I'm just saying that's another thing you could do at some point is move Michael Penix. It's just a possibility.
Or move Kirk Cousins.
Or move Kirk Cousins. But there's one other thing about this version of the Falcons that I like. Is that no one knew this was coming. There's no leaks inside that building. I mean, we knew there was reporting that they liked Penix a lot. We've known that, but no one saw this coming.
No,
Anyone, not a single soul.
Rap Sheet had it in the hour before the draft. Give credit to him. He didn't say it was definitely happening, but he pretty much threw it out there like, don't be surprised if Penix goes to the Falcons. So right before the draft, and that was the first I had heard even one person mention that.
Stunning.
The problem is, though, they are human beings here, and you mentioned the Cousins part of it. So our guy, Rap Sheet, reported, he got a call like while the Falcons were on the clock to let him know. But, DJ and then also the Athletics, Diana Racino, kind of mentioned like the agent, it was a surprise. Coming into tonight, Cousins had no idea. I think they used the word stunned. And these are 2 people, and Cousins especially, that are going to have to go and work together. Cousins is coming off an injury, so I don't know if he's not going to be ready to be on the field right now. Like when they go to OTAs in a couple weeks, it's going to be Penix with the starting
That'll
team.
be his moment for the next couple of years. He'll have that OTA in the spring of 2020.
Well, it's a little awkward because you did mention like, is he going to be ready? The funny thing about Penix is he should be about as ready as anyone. He started 48 games over 5 seasons in college.
But he's not ready. He's not going to play for him.
But what I'm saying is,
You got a guy that's ready to play that's not going to play.
I'm saying he might. I think it's been a little.
Oh,
Who's crying for Taylor Heineke, Greg? Taylor Heineke, who took a hometown discount to stay with the Falcons, is take the next Greyhound bus.
We got to move on.
All I mean is just.
Yeah.
But you two are not. You're never going to agree, Dan. You're not going to agree with Greg, and
It's not so much the agree, but I just want to point out that no one's kind of brought up the fact that why are we assuming Kirk Cousins is ready for Week 1 at 36 years old, coming off a torn Achilles? It's like the human body, and
I would say the
10-month recovery.
In recent years, players that have that injury are ready. Now he could have a setback or whatever, and
well, they didn't give him that money thinking he's not going to be ready too.
No, I'm just saying.
Maybe there's something we don't know about Cousins, and maybe he had a setback. Maybe there's something more to the story. But my last point is, I don't think Cousins obviously isn't happy. I don't think Michael Penix is happy either. He's happy he's a first-round pick, but he went somewhere where he's not going to play. That's not great either. And if you see him when he picks up the phone, you can see it in his mind. He's like, wait, what's going on? His agent probably was like, all right, you're going to the team that just signed a guy for $100 million guaranteed over the next 2 years, but it's cool. You're a top 10 pick. Like, it's a bittersweet moment, I would imagine, for Michael Penix Jr.
Sure. From one other angle, though, from like a more cutthroat angle, like there are people that were mocking him to the second round. He's getting top 8 money.
No, that's great.
So
that's great. The
and
money's great.
honestly, like if he does a Jordan Love thing where, a couple seasons from now he comes in and shines, like he gets his 5th-year option picked up too. There's less bad tape or raw tape potentially to learn behind Cousins.
Right. I am a little worried about him, although Jordan Love was a tricky prospect, a surprising pick too, and that worked out. My last thing is just the video of Terry Fontenot talking to Arthur Blank in their war room was a fascinating video. I really want to know. It really sounded like he was trying to like explain the pick, because when this pick happened, I was like, is this ownership? Because we've heard how Blank wants his guy, his quarterback, and I was like, is ownership kind of making them take a quarterback of the future? Like, based on what we've heard over the last few years, like, Arthur Blank could be involved, but then this image of Fontenot almost like going through and explaining, and then he was like moving it down. It was almost like he was, to me, if I had to guess, was explaining like why we couldn't trade back to maybe take Penix.
Arthur Blank was born in 1942. I would imagine he, he's a guy that's looking for some results this year. And
yes,
the player that they added this year probably can't help them this year. So Wild. All right. So that's like the big crazy story that came out of the day. But and we told you about the overall numbers and the bulk of certain positions. Let's start at the top of the draft. And so it's Caleb Williams, as expected, to the Bears. Jaden Daniels, as expected, to the Commanders. Drake May, as expected, to the Patriots. Takeaway. Let's check out, by the way, Caleb Williams. He and good job by our company, which has blown this draft thing up into things that I can't even wrap my head around as someone that used to go to Radio City Music Hall years ago. What it is now compared to what it was then, it's absurd. So now all the guys run down.
I don't think they want you to use the word absurd, but you can.
In a positive
That's
way.
a positive absurd.
Yeah.
There's like a 25-yard runway with a matching color scheme for the player, and then they get their hat and their jersey. It's the whole thing. It's made for television, like the halftime show for the Super Bowl. Here's Caleb Williams, and check this out on YouTube if you haven't seen it. Speed walking down and then letting out a big old Ric Flair.
He's about to put a Bears hat on and introduce himself to the world and head to Michigan Avenue.
He might not have ran a 40 in Indy, but he's running one here. I mean, he is flying up there. He is excited to get this journey started.
He really sold me, both the way he came out there, the way he spoke in his interviews. Just seems like a dude.
Yeah, he also had that how he finished his interview with Kaylee Hartung making her NFL Network debut.
The Bears.
That was how he finished that. Yeah, I loved that, and we don't have to spend a ton of time, I know, but we just haven't talked that much about Caleb Williams. And when we say like he can make every throw, like I mean like every throw. And I heard Ollie Connolly talk about it on his podcast, and I thought it was really smart the way he put it. That like one drive he can kind of look like Mahomes, and then the next drive he can kind of look like Manning, and then you watch how he navigates in the pocket, and that like reminds you of the very best people in terms of inside the pocket, and he has the experience with the RPO, and he has the quick release. He just feels like he has every single club in the bag, and he kind of brings out different things based on what he needs, and it's just I am very excited to watch me some Caleb, and he's just so accurate. He's the most accurate guy in the class too, so it's like no prospect is perfect or whatever, but I am so excited to watch this dude. Is going to be a value add for the league. I think we saw that with his personality, and I'm excited that I get to watch him with Roma Dunze.
Well, and he's what an incredible introduction from an NFC North standpoint. He's coming out there and he's booed lustily by Lions fans who have packed the place. He doesn't seem to care at all, and it's like you have to go back to 1947 and Bob Fenimore, the blonde bomber, the last time that the Bears picked a quarterback first overall. That's crazy. That's there's no team coming close to that stat, I would imagine. And I do think it matters that on USC, there's a lot of like ballyhooed USC stuff when they brought in the new coach. It's like they were 123rd in scoring defense. So he was under the gun to fire the ball downfield over and over. I think as a deep passer, he's incredible. The Bears haven't had someone like this in eons. It's like they feel like outside Fields had that one nice season, but it's like this is a team that kind of, even when they went to the Super Bowl against the Colts, it's like always minus the star quarterback. And I think it's a completely new organization at this point because of him.
And I think, I was at the end of last season. I still think Justin Fields has a chance to have a really good career. And we'll see what happens in Pittsburgh or wherever he ends up being potentially as a long-term solution for somebody. But when you see a player like this and you start to really dig in on his background and you see the way he came out there, it's like, okay, this guy is someone that you hit the reset with him, and then you pair him, like we said, with a number 9 pick after the Falcons stun the world and take a quarterback. That leaves this great prospect, Roma Dunze, who some people say, Marvin Harrison, who goes 4th to the Cardinals, we'll get to in a second. He was the kind of clear-cut number 1 guy, but people think that Dunze could be an absolute superstar. And now you got DJ Moore across from him, and you have what Bryce Young, for example, did not have last year, which is a real supporting cast around him. So the Bears suddenly go from one of the most boring teams to watch over the last 10 years or so. They are going to be kind of must-see TV, at least in the beginning of the season.
And it happened quickly, and it's like the only thing I think they've got to focus on more offensive line help. They had the highest pressure rate in the league last year. So it's like that's one.
Yep.
We saw Fields getting destroyed by that over and over, and it's like that's not a wonderful thing for Caleb Williams. But They have done a lot in 2 off seasons, and that trade last off season with the Panthers looks better and better and better by the minute.
Right. They got very fortunate that the Panthers ended up being the worst team in the league. Like that. Like, look,
That is
they probably didn't think the Panthers were going to be good, so they were taking a shot, and you're rolling.
They
the dice.
nailed it. They
You're
nailed
hoping-
everything
yeah.
about it.
You're hoping for the best.
Pound it.
But they got like one of the best quarterback prospects we've seen in a long time, and now Keenan Allen can play inside. By the way, too, it's like, of course, Adunze can move inside sometimes
Holy
too, and Keenan
Max.
Allen can play outside
That's
sometimes.
right. They got Keenan Allen.
Of course, they're going to be
too.
flexible, but Allen to
Fun.
me is now at his best inside. You have Komet there. DeAndre Swift was a nice pickup. They absolutely are going to see that over under, which was at 8.5, I believe. Like, I mean, that's just going to with Adunze. I just feel like that's going to keep
That
rising.
division has turned semi-psychotic.
All right, the Commanders, they do indeed take Jaden Daniels. Don't believe anything about them moving out of that pick. They take Daniels, so he is the future for Washington. And then, Greg, we could talk about both these players, but Drake May then goes to the Patriots, who apparently there was a report out there. This is an interesting report. You see this report? It was the Patriots and Vikings reached out to the Chargers about Justin Herbert. It cannot.
I loved.
Yeah, it
that.
cannot hurt. This is from Adam Schefter, by the way, to kick the tires on that one. And just because Jim Harbaugh, kind of nuts. So you just kick the tires, call the crazy guy, and just see what's going on with him. And they were rebuffed, obviously. And then they go back and they say, okay, we're cool with this dude. What do you think about this dude? How excited are you? 1 to 10, Greggy.
I am a 10.
Woo.
This is what I was hoping for the
I
whole
love this
time.
for the Patriots.
That Drake May would fall to them. I didn't think was going to happen on Christmas Eve when they beat the Broncos in that weird game, and I was enjoying the game. It's a lonely Christmas for me, and it's like the Patriots brought a little joy. I was like, it's worth it, but they're not going to get Drake May now. And for Jaden Daniels to become this consensus number 2 pick and going into today, I was just worried they were going to get too cute and trade down. It's like, when are you going to have a legit superstar potential quarterback sitting there? Hopefully you're not drafting that high. And when I watch him, he is just box office, and he is an incredible runner. It wouldn't surprise me of all these guys who can all run well if he has the most rushing value, if he's kind of a Jalen Hurts type of player early in his career. You can build a decent amount of the offense about his running and his deep passing. And that to me is just an exciting offense. I'm glad. It sounded like they never even considered it. You could tell Gerard Mayo is totally different because he basically told the Patriots draft party an hour and a half before the draft, we're not trading the pick. We're just gonna, don't worry. We're gonna make our pick early, and you're gonna like it. He's a great player. And it's like, okay, I guess they're taking Drake May. They already were saying forget about the trade. We're not thinking about it.
He's fascinating. He is someone that I think is going to be an immediate fan favorite for his physical nature of play, what he can do on the ground. I mean, there has been concern about the little things that he's got to grow at, and some of his accuracy on passes that he does these incredible things, but then he's like, wait a minute, what happened right there? It's almost like there is a version of you want to see the way that Josh Allen grew in certain little ways. When people would, kind of were ready to throw Josh Allen out the window, he
I was one of
improved,
those people.
but he improved as a pro, and that's unusual. That's atypical. And so Drake May needs to have a similar growth pattern for certain elements of his game, but it's this is a whole new day for the Patriots.
I don't see him as raw though. I don't think he's as raw as everyone said. I think he did a lot of next level stuff. He was just in a brutal situation. He's about to be again. They kind of have talked about already that Jacoby Brissett, I have a feeling, will be the week 1 starter. We'll see. It probably won't last that long. And it was funny. You mentioned Josh Allen. I know you want to go, Dan, but Bill Belichick was on McAfee, and he was quoted saying, Drake compares himself a lot to Josh Allen. He's been doing that for quite a while. I haven't seen that. A lot of people compare them. Did he? We'll see about that. And then he kind of negged Drake May a little bit. But to be fair, he kind of negged all the top 5 picks. That's when I watched the Belichick portion of the McAfee. It was very different
Was
than
that
the
the portion of the telecast where the audio was working for Bill
Yes,
Belichick?
they had some snafus on YouTube and whatnot. But
So I've heard.
he was trying to really calm everyone down, really about all the picks and pointing out the negatives, but especially May. He seemed to.
That's
was pretty
refreshing.
raw. Yeah.
I thought
What did he say? Was he freaking out about Penix like everyone else?
I left that telecast around pick 5. Too much for me. I'm a loyal company man. I was trying to watch both. It was too hard.
Okay. I was just curious if anyone else picked up on the NFL Network the way they were talking about Drake May, as if it was almost a foregone conclusion that he wouldn't start, and that they were going to bring him along slowly. And that's to what you're saying, that I guess he needs polished in the eyes of some, but that doesn't really happen.
Well, that's that means week 3 or week 4. But Jacoby Brissett.
But that's not the way it was being discussed. It wasn't like he's going to start by October 1st. It kind of was being talked about, like, this is going to be sitting behind him for a year.
Though, like this, that's cool until like they're 0-2.
Right. I mean, Mac.
No, but wait a second. We're not going back down this road. Michael Penix isn't going in the lineup if Kirk Cousins is 0-2.
I know, but I'm saying to your point that Penix is away. To your argument that you're not getting someone who's going to help you right away. Like Drake May is completely different. If they're underwater, Drake May is going to be in the lineup by halftime of week 1 potentially. I don't want to hear this sitting for a year as a starter behind Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, and I don't. I mean, it's like Mac Jones played a lot as a rookie. Played pretty well. Like I don't.
As a rookie.
If they're a good enough coaching staff, like he will be playing. There's no reason to be that.
Pay it no mind what people say about rookies waiting on the bench. In almost all cases, they end up playing very quickly now. Marvin Harrison Jr., yes, goes to the Cardinals 4 overall. A lot of discussion about them moving back and letting a QB needy team trade up. They obviously did not have either the interest to make that move, or they didn't get an offer that they liked, so they sit home. And this is something I thought they should have done all along. I thought it was the right move. You get yourself a potential superstar wide receiver, pair him with Kyler Murray, who, despite being under contract for big money, is coming back for his first full season after ACL, and you just got to find out if this is truly going to work. Now you give him an absolute stud to play with.
There is value if they were treated to a monster deal by the Vikings to do what they talked about being very open to doing. But I think if you're a Cardinals fan who's suffered through many rough seasons, this is basically saying we've gotten our next version of Larry Fitzgerald. And he's not exactly explosive as like a Malik Neighbors. He's different, but he does like everything so well that it's a rare player where I think it's a little unfair to him, but it's it's a disappointment if he isn't a Hall of Fame wide receiver. Like if he'd made 2 Pro Bowls and was a top 10 guy, it's that's a disappointment. Like the expectations are through the roof. And I think for once, if you're the Cardinals, this was a need that matches up with arguably the best player in the draft. I have no problem with this.
I love it. I love not getting cute, but I don't think they had the option.
I don't think they were offered.
I mean, the whole McCarthy was never in the class with May and Daniels. I think teams were just seeing which quarterback for sure was going to shake out to 3. And our reporting on NFL Network was that the Giants and the Vikings both tried to trade up with the Patriots. And they even made a last-ditch effort of raising their offer to trade up with the Patriots. And it's safe to assume that's for Drake May. Patriots didn't want to do it. They stayed and picked. And once he wasn't available, the Vikings were fine just letting McCarthy fall down the board. Obviously, they end up getting him, and the Giants were never going to take him in the first place, apparently.
Right. It tells you how much the Patriots think of Drake May's potential here, that they would that could have been a real boon for them to get additional picks at a time where they really need to stock that roster. But if they love the QB, you take the QB.
This is also where my mock draft went into a fiery dumpster, or began to.
And we're going to hit that at the end of the show. But yeah, it's a tough thing to do. It's not easy business, Mark. You know that. Don't beat yourself up. Joe Alt goes number 5 to the Chargers. So a little bit, I wouldn't say it was a surprise. A lot of people had him pegged for 7 to the Titans. The Titans were not happy with this because, we don't know it, but they take J.C. Latham from Alabama, also a tackle, but you would think they wanted to have the choice of the two, or Alt outright. So you have those 2 linemen go sandwiched around, the New York Giants. So the Giants, if Drake May or Jaden Daniels were on the board, that's probably the new quarterback of the New York Giants. But once those 3 players went off, they stayed home and they took Malik Neighbors. I have obviously Giants fans, friends back east that some of them were like, I wish they took Rome Odunze. He's the guy that's gotten a little bit more buzz leading up to the draft. However, you talk to people, this guy has every opportunity here to become a superstar as well if put in the right situation.
Yeah, and The Giants aren't the right situation. Not now. I mean, they haven't been. Maybe they can become that. He's another he's another receiver who probably works his best over the middle of the field, which it feels like that's all they've got is all these different guys, and yet he's like 3 tiers above. He's so explosive. I think there were probably more teams that had him over Harrison than even maybe there were teams that had Odunze over Neighbors. I think people just fell in love with his explosiveness. And I did like what Harbaugh said about Alt. He was like, people are going to say, like, what about your weapons? Where are your weapons? And he said, with the Chargers, like, we're going to look at the offensive line as weapons.
Yeah, they have
real football.
Remember his thing about the 5 fingers make a fist with the offensive line? I mean, he kind of let it be known from the very start.
I love the pick for them. They have Rashawn Slater too, but Trey Pipkins is not going to be starting at that point at that position. Joe Alt, like the one thing is like, a lot of these guys weren't at the draft, but they cut to his house. He's like 6'8". He stood up and was like 2 feet taller than anyone else in the household. Like there was like the 30 people around him.
You love it. You love big humans.
Well, I think actually, like to me, it was like some of these teams did not do what we expected, but for the Chargers, who I thought were a trade down candidate, to go get Joe Alt is like, that's a Harbaugh player. That's a Greg Roman type player, and he dominates in the run game. He's massive, and it's exactly the setup point.
He's 6'9".
They want like seven or 8 guys to play line. So
there are almost no comps like to his height and size. Jonathan Ogden is one of them, and was one of the greatest players of all time at his position. There's a few other here and there, but to be that athletic at 6'9", it's just like, we're seeing this across all sports. Like humans are testing the bounds of like how athletic tall people essentially can be. You see it in tennis, you see it in basketball. It's just like preposterous how athletic now like a 6'9" tackle could be.
Not horse racing. Don't see it there.
Not in horse racing.
No. In fact, you see a lot of bad things happening in horse racing when you push the animal too far. And in baseball, the game for pitchers right now, there's like an epidemic right now with pitchers suffering arm injuries because things like spin rate and velocity keeps going up, and they're dealing now the sport with like, how do we rein this in because the human body can't take it? You gotta be careful with these big men. Don't let them get too big. We're mere humans. That's all I'm saying. We're mortal.
Tell it to Randy Johnson. Like tell it to the bird that he hit.
Tell it to the.
Remember that?
I think we can.
Tell it to the 230-pound linebacker that's trying to get around this mountain.
That sounds like the end of baseball, by the way. Or we're creeping towards the end of the sport.
I think it'll be fun.
It does. I mean, there are people like you who want baseball to die.
That's not true at all.
It never will. Mark.
There's nothing nicer to do than go to a baseball game out on a summer day. But you're saying that literally the most important position is losing. The human body can't keep up with the sport.
I believe they'll find
troubling.
a way. That's all.
Well,
but I'm educating you on something going on there.
Okay.
It's a completely different sport.
I didn't know that.
Football.
It is kind of a letdown.
Football is completely different than basketball.
Of a Titans draft. It's just like it's not, you've mentioned it's not as exciting. I know we'll get to the Jets like when you take the tackle, but at least it was like, ooh, we got the guy. This is a tackle that would have gone maybe top 3 some years. Like it's certainly a better prospect.
I will say this:
Jokel or Eric Fisher were like when they were coming out.
I think Joe Alt was like an outlier. He's the one offensive lineman where you would come out of the draft like, yeah, we got the 6'9" beast.
Right.
But instead, J.C. Latham, by the way, could end up being way better than Joe Alt. But it does, in right now where we stand, it doesn't seem as fun or exciting. All right, let's finish off the top 10, and then we're going to take a break. So we mentioned J.J. McCarthy, the last quarterback standing, and there are the Vikings, and the Cardinals were hoping that maybe the Vikings would pick up in a panic and try to do a trade there. Perhaps, but they don't. The Vikings hang back. They hang back, and McCarthy stays on the board, even when the team at number 8 stuns the world with a quarterback pick. It's not J.J. McCarthy. So what do the Vikings do? They pick up the phone at 11. They call up the Jets, or the Jets call the Vikings. I thought Daniel Jeremiah, I have to give him a little pop. He expertly foreshadowed this like minutes ahead of time. That the Jets, he's been in a situation where you just pick up the phone if you're the Jets perhaps and say, hey, you want to move up one ahead of us before somebody else jumps ahead of you? And they ended up, the Jets trade out of the pick. They gain a little bit of draft capital, move back one spot. And yes, J.J. McCarthy goes to the Minnesota Vikings there is their quarterback of the future.
I will say that I thought that, like, Kwesi, the GM for the Vikings, like, you've got to kind of, if you're a Vikings fan, this was like a nice hand of cards. Like, he did a nice job here because they were the candidate to ship both their first round picks to get JJ. It wasn't to get someone else. It was in theory like to get JJ McCarthy as the fourth quarterback.
They tried to, but it was for Drake May.
But it was sure. But
they
saying
didn't value McCarthy like that.
But even in the days leading up, it was like the thought was they would have been okay with McCarthy and they would have moved and it would have taken a lot. You gave up a little bit, but you kind of got your guy or the guy that was most likely to fall to you at where if you moved up to number 4 here. And it's like it's good for the Jets, but it was good for the Vikings. And I kind of like the fit with Kevin O'Connell. I think a quarterback's in a good place there. You've got wide receivers. You've got a good tight end. Like your offense is kind of ready to go. And I think what happens to McCarthy is one of the more interesting subplots to next season. It's not great for Sam Darnold, but I think there was always a plan to get a different quarterback. Darnold knew that too.
Once they traded for that second first-round pick, the writing was on the wall.
Yeah.
Now it just becomes, again, there will be, and they'll play their cards close to the vest, like who's going to start at the beginning of the season. But J.J. McCarthy is the quote-unquote proven winner. He's a guy that's won at every level he's played at. I think they're going to view him as a guy that's going to be ready physically and emotionally to take that gig, and they're going to hope he's going to run with it. I was a little spooked. Like if I'm even though they were smart the way they played, they didn't panic. And I thought if they wanted a quarterback and they couldn't get those top 3, more or less staying home or as close as you can to staying home was the right play. But then, you see like people that been studying this player for months and months and years saying, oh, he's like maybe like an Alex Smith. Like, oh, okay. All right. Well, he had some good years, but I mean, is that what you want out of your number? I guess. I don't know. Is Alex Smith, is that a ceiling that's acceptable for the pick? I don't know. If that's what his ceiling is.
He's been compared sometimes to Cousins, like to the next gen Cousins. It's kind of like
you could deal with that. That's right. That one I could live with.
And it's kind of like when you're comparing these guys, Penix to Flacco is another one from DJ where it's like next gen Flacco, next gen Cousins, because like every quarterback now is extremely athletic compared to those guys. It's fun. Like JJ McCarthy's almost talked about as like his athleticism is boring. He tested off the charts for some of this stuff. Like he's not like gonna make you miss, but his straight line speed, his 3-cone, like that sort of stuff. Like he has a big arm and he's an athlete, even if that's not the main part of his game. But he did seem to be the guy that the Sean McVay tree, of which O'Connell is one, liked the best because he's like the 1 to 2 to 3. Like maybe not so much Cousins or Alex Smith, but like a better Brock Purdy, which obviously you would take if he actually can deliver on that. I wonder if the Broncos wanted J.J. McCarthy, because that's the reason you trade up.
Well, I think probably more than Bo Nix if we could truth serum them.
Right. Well, we will never find out.
Yeah. Hold that thought. Let's take a break, and when we get back, we check in on the middle of the first round. Stay right there. All right, welcome back. So the Jets move back one spot, and Brock Bowers is there. I think they really, you'll never know, but I think they were hoping Rome Odunze was there, and I think they maybe would have pulled the trigger there, but maybe they always were going to take the best offensive lineman available at that point, and it was Olu Fashanu.
Yeah, you got it. First try.
Olu Fashanu from Penn State. So, like I said on our last show, when your team takes an offensive lineman, it's never overly exciting. However, they have a left and a right tackle, even as high as the potential is with Tyron Smith now there at left tackle. 2 33-year-olds, Morgan Moses on the other side. Smith's injury issues are well documented. If either of those guys go down, or both those guys go down, all of a sudden you have a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers coming off an Achilles injury, and you're right back where it feels like you've been. So it makes sense. It's a sensible pick. If Brock Bowers, who then goes 2 picks later to the Raiders, turns into George Kittle, like his comp that's out there, and Fashanu, it becomes yet another offensive lineman who kind of just kicks around the league and it doesn't quite take. If he becomes Mekhi Becton, you have to live with it. But it makes sense. It's a logical pick for the Jets.
That's the whole like psychological dynamic of the draft is you, no matter what kind of fan you are or even analyst, if you like a team, you're kind of just dreaming of the showy, sexy weapons type guy. And like, you don't really value offensive linemen out of the gate. But this guy's been compared to Laramie Tunzel. Jason Zumwalt, when he announced this pick in the mock draft, was salivating over the 6'6" frame, 317 pounds. And you know what's not exciting is having your quarterback swarmed by bees 4 plays into the season, and the season is destroyed. So I like the idea of protecting Aaron Rodgers and not having the whole thing crumble minutes into campaign 2.
Right. This is I didn't like when it was positioned as like, well, do you take a pick for now with the Jets with a pass catcher, or do you take a pick for the future with the tackle? It's like, no, this is for now. Like hopefully he's not starting week 1, but it would be a shock if he wasn't needed to start this season. And I really liked him. I think he was probably the consensus tackle too, certainly over Latham, in that like we've seen with tackles that it's a really developmental position, maybe even more than quarterback, where it takes you 1 year, 2 years. It takes a while. And Fashanu kind of combined maybe better than the others, a guy that could play sooner than later and had some upside behind probably only Alt. And he's definitely a guy that's like better in pass pro than run blocking. It's like, sign me up for those guys. Those are like kind of the tackles I want, the guys that pass.
Yeah, DJ said he would have been a top 5 pick a year ago. So, I mean, I think this is just one of these drafts where he's getting pushed down the board a little bit because of the positions that are going ahead of him.
And I'll give Joe Douglas credit. I think when you look at what they've done this offseason, he could have done the thing that would have made a lot of sense, which is almost make it a absurd all-in year where you're doing things like you trade up for Marvin Harrison, or you make that extra signing or two in free agency. I thought all of his moves that he made, for the most part, have made this team better and are giving them a real chance in 2024. And while they're going to have a lot of work to do next year if Aaron Rodgers is gone or can't play anymore, they haven't mortgaged the farm in terms of a lot of their spending. So I think he has handled this in a responsible way, considering there's a very good chance he's not around anymore if the season goes poorly. I don't think he is GM that way.
No, but we want, like, to be fair, it's not a Penix situation, but if you're going to take someone at 11, you want him to contribute and play very soon too.
I think he will, though.
Yeah, well, also because invariably it's the Jets. They're going to lose like 2 linemen. You know,
that has been the way. I would be very surprised if we don't see Olu on the field this year.
You got to come up with a nickname for him. You can't.
Olu Fashanu. I mean, Olu's a good name.
Pretty good. So, yes, Bo Nix. So he is the 6th quarterback off the board in 12 picks to the Denver Broncos. Greg, what were your thoughts about this selection? Sean Payton seemed to be pretty happy with himself in the war room after it went down 24 years
Imagine
old.
That.
Auburn transfer to Oregon, and now he is entering a quarterback room that has Jarrett Stidham, that has Zach Wilson, and now Bo Nix, who I would imagine is going to be playing very soon.
I want to get into Nix, but as you mentioned, like being proud of himself in the war room, this is the first draft I've ever watched partially with Emeka, my wife, along with Walker. You know, she was there just coming in and out, but she's like, why are they so proud of themselves when they like make a decision? It's like, like she really cracked up about that. They're all like high-fiving. There is something awkward to an outsider of like, hey, we just called in the pick, and then like 15 different guys are like high-fiving each other. There is something.
I mean, they've been working on it for months, though. I mean, but also they're all on the cusp of probably like separations and divorces. You know,
we did it. We just called it a name.
That is that moment, and you could tell Emeka. I said that. I'm sure she'll be thrilled to hear me mansplain.
She has never listened to the show, and
thrilled.
We'll start now.
That's the culmination.
I did say
of months and months
of hard work, Dan,
of grinding.
Right.
That was
under
my
the radar.
And we appreciate that.
That was my answer.
For one moment.
She was like, "Oh, you beat the 10-minute clock to make a phone call." I was like, "Okay, that's fair." I don't love what I've heard from Sean Payton afterwards. It almost sounds like in all these little leaks coming out, and Sean Payton
he's coming after Payton. I love it.
Well, it's just like,
what is it now? What did he do?
Nothing. Just that they're so high on Bo Nix, and they're just leaking all this stuff.
Of course they're going to say they're high on Bo Nix. They just drafted him with the 12th overall pick.
Of course, but no one thought he was a special enough player to go in the first round. And so I said he gave me Jake Locker, Christian Ponder vibes, and it wasn't because of his playing style at all. Maybe Ponder. It wasn't because of his playing style. It's just like, it's the end of the quarterback run. We have to get a quarterback. We can't wait any longer.
That's fair.
Let's take the last one before we feel like there's a drop off.
The one thing I do like about him, he had 3,724 college snaps. That's more than like Burrows had in the NFL. And it's like he transferred and had like 2 totally different types of playing styles. Like he was a better, different, more accurate type quarterback at Oregon. But I'm with you. I mean,
I don't know, that whole thing where it's like this guy played a ton of snaps in college doesn't do a ton for me.
61 career starts.
Then there's
bizarre.
then there's like Achilles Smith who had 12 starts and went like 2nd overall or something and flamed out. Like I think having more tape on a quarterback is a good thing. I don't know, but the odds are the 6th quarterback off the board in the first round is problematic.
His like super high tier comp was Breeze, that he's just like a point guard, a quick decision maker,
and who coached Drew Brees,
but also sort of an Alex Smith too,
right? And Peyton is such a good coach. His quarterbacks always have good numbers, always are pretty efficient. Like he's gonna make it work well. It's just with the 12th overall pick, you're taking a quarterback. You want someone that can maybe make all the throws and that has shown an ability to withstand pressure. That was a thing watching him. He didn't face a lot of pressure when he was at Oregon, but when he did, he had like no answer for it.
Well, he also had 45 touchdowns, 3 picks last season, and a 77.4 completion percentage. So it's not, some of these guys are like, well, we hope they can be accurate as a pro. We love their arm and all this stuff. It's like, I think this is a Sean Payton type guy. Like, so I can understand. I don't think it's all false PR that I know that anything that comes out of Sean Payton's mouth, Greg, and Amica apparently are going to disagree with or shun, but it's like he can work with this guy. So
he wasn't commenting on Sean Payton specifically. It was a different war room. But he actually admitted after, too, that he's like, well, I may have been directly responsible for making people think that we were going to trade up. So he was bragging afterwards how he...
It's almost like
he verbalized that like 12 times.
It's almost like Sean Payton has an exceedingly high opinion of himself. I just get this feeling. Anybody else get that feeling?
There is an energy.
All right, I'm going to do the next 5 picks and jump in with anything on any of them, okay? So you got Brock Bowers, the tight end, going to the Raiders. So they find their Darren Waller replacement. Look at it that way, as a hyper-athletic playmaker, maybe not a high-end blocker. The Saints draft a tackle. I'm not going to get this one. Talisi Fuaga out of Oregon State. And then at number 15, the Colts say, you know what, we're going to end the streak, and we're going to take a defensive player. So they take Latu, defensive end out of UCLA. So you get high value there as the first defensive player off the board in the middle of the first round. This was an outlier, obviously. And the Seahawks take Byron Murphy, the defensive tackle out of Texas. So there is 13 through 16.
So Bowers going to the Raiders was fascinating. No one had that happening. I love it because they just need more weapons. But the reason no one had it happening is because they just took Michael Mayer last year, which is like a high second round pick. But
interesting.
It was a different regime, and I'm with that. First of all, Bowers is a whole nother level of athleticism.
You could make 2 tight ends work in an NFL offense.
Right. You want to. And Mayer is a little bit more of the inline tight end who can also catch some passes, but isn't going to be going for like 1,000 yards. And Bowers could be that guy. And you just can't make decisions based on what the last GM did.
Right.
Oh, he took Mayer, so I can't take him. If you think Bowers is the best guy, and a lot of teams probably
especially
did, good value.
Especially the last Raiders GM.
But now,
generally,
but from like a Raiders fan perspective, last year you used a first round pick on a tight end. You weren't
high second.
Oh, high second on a tight end. Like, was his ceiling here like inline blocker who has 600 yards in a season? Like,
right.
It doesn't sound like a team that's, but that's the risk when you blow things up and regimes change. It leads to these.
It's great news for Gardner Minshew because it's like you're starting. It's your team at this point. But I will say the one pick, I think
it's not great news for Devontae Adams, but yeah.
No, you're right. But if you're Mike McDonald, I just watched what he did with so many Ravens players on defense last year. I didn't know what the Seahawks were going to do in this. I kind of thought they might go for quarterback, like they might. But Byron Murphy, to me, I loved watching him. And I think Mike McDonald is going to get something out of Byron Murphy right away. It wasn't like it was the biggest need on the play. They had other needs, but like I think it's a Seattle Seahawks type player.
Right, and the Saints pick, they kind of had to make it. This has been bubbling around, but Ian reported how Ryan Ramczyk might be retiring. So I talked about how they blew their left tackle pick a couple of years ago, Trevor Penning, who can't get on the field. So they needed a left tackle. They also needed a right tackle. So they just had to take a tackle, and they took the guy who's like most fun to watch and like a brawler type, which is very Saintsy. And I will say, Latu, like his pass rushing was, I'm pumped for him as a pro. Him and my guy Newton were my 2 favorite defensive players in the draft. Only one of them got drafted tonight, though.
We'll talk about that on Saturday.
Yikes.
But little Susie ain't getting the braces this summer.
Not this summer.
Maybe next summer.
Don't count on it.
Old Bucktooth Susie.
It gets tougher and tougher to correct teeth with braces as you age.
Got to keep her in the dark.
Hey, I didn't make you guys follow me, but I did get a tweet from Tahutch76. Rainmaker blanked me again.
All right. Stick a pin in that. Defensive run, the third defensive player in a row because the Vikings, they make more moves. Yes, Greg?
No, go ahead.
Pointing at me.
No, I just want to jump in on the Vikings.
Okay, I just let me get it out. Minnesota Vikings via trade from the Jaguars get Dallas Turner, outside linebacker from Alabama. That nice value pick there, Greggy.
It was, I had a harder time with him, but he's a lot of people had him as the top edge rusher. DJ had him like great value to get up there, but they gave up a 3 and a 4 to move up 5 spots, and it did make me think about them.
Maybe not a value pick.
They've just been building this team up for 3 years now, even though they have like a new quarterback. It felt like this was a little bit of go time for Kwesi. They've been accumulating picks. They've been taking a lot of different guys, and it was like, we got to start getting our guys, and we got to kind of push our chips in the table. We got to be a little better this year to help out our rookie quarterback and Sam Darnold on the defensive side. So they're kind of taking a swing here by giving up all those picks.
That was
just to move up 5 spots.
That was expensive. It was a 5th, along with the switching first. It was a 5th this year and a 3rd and a 4th next season.
Now, Mark, I don't get too jazzed up about guys that play a million snaps in college, but I do get nervous when guys hardly play in college.
Right.
And so the Bengals, and a lot of people saw this coming. Mark, I think you had Cincinnati going for the offensive line in your Mark draft.
Yeah, not this guy.
Amarius Mims out of Georgia, who's got everything you could want out of a tackle in terms of size and athleticism, but this man made 8 starts in college. So that is obviously you're looking at his traits and you're saying this is an NFL player, but you barely saw him in college, but the tape and his testing was enough for Cincinnati to say maybe we have something special here. That seems like a roll of the dice at 18.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think injury history and durability matter. Like, he allowed 1 QB hurry on 297 snaps last year, and I don't know. I think that if you read the positive traits, the Bengals are hoping.
Traits are great.
I mean, because he's shown those things. It's not like they're guessing that he has them. It's just that he wasn't around.
Yeah.
6'8", though. They have a type. Their 3 tackles right now are Orlando Brown, one of the largest humans ever created. Trent Brown, one of the largest humans ever created.
With a baby
now,
face.
Amarius Mims, who a lot of people, the people that are super into tackles in the draft, they're thinking he's the most fascinating guy in the draft, that the boomer bust guy in the draft. Could be a total top 5 talent and total, who knows. But they have a good development.
6'7", 340, gifted with size and athleticism. Mekhi Becton. Like, it can go both ways with the Giants.
Yeah, but what do you want him to be, 5'9", 180?
No, I want him to be exactly 6'6", 318, and then I'm totally fine with the pick. You asked.
Well,
that's a great point, Mark.
Thank you.
You just
Didn't
want
even make a point.
be on the field a little more. Yeah, I guess that's what you want.
That's the question.
What was the point that you don't want him to be small?
I thought I made a point that I think if you're listening to this, you're thinking I took Dan in a different direction there. Wheeled him around a little bit.
The Rams, wheel this. The Rams at 19 finally pick. This one was fun. I enjoyed this. You love the pick.
I love the player.
Okay, I love this. All right, so Jared Verse is a very talented defensive end. A lot of people say, oh, maybe the best pure pass rusher and all that. However, enough. However, I loved this from Charles Davis, who while Jared Verse is off the board and it's this big moment in his life, Here's Charles Davis asking the questions that need to be asked.
I talked with a top-level NFL scout, former GM, and he said that, hey, this kid had the reputation of being, kind of a you-know-what. So I asked him point blank, are you a new you-know-what, Jared Verse? And he said, I am on the practice field and on the game field. The rest of the time, I'm an okay guy. He knows how to turn it on.
Just like Charles Davis. So you an ass? Like, be honest. You an ass?
I love it. I don't know if I saw anyone like on the defensive side of the ball that made me more interested in this player.
Charles was kind of working blue tonight because he also tried to quote, why am I forgetting his name? Brian Cox's character in Succession, F off during the telecast.
Davis was out there today.
I like that. I like that version of him.
I love that Charles Davis.
Sorry, Jared Verse. You were very.
You love that Jared Verse.
No, I think the way he rushes the passer. Like I mentioned on that other show, watching him just like take, these 6'6", 340-pound guys and just like smashing them into the quarterback, and they both fall to the ground like toy soldiers. It's like this guy like makes the Rams. I mean, it was a need for them too, but it's like it is someone that can come in and like punish people in the NFC West. I kind of love him the way he plays.
It's a nice team.
I love him.
With Byron Young, who's kind of the total opposite. You have the bend the edge, speed edge rusher, and then you have the big, strong, maybe set the edge a little better in the run defense with Jared Verse. So they're a nice little team.
And if he's a little bit of a butthead, hopefully he can deal with it. You know what I mean?
You said he's a good guy. He claimed.
He said he was.
Yeah. Well, how would anyone?
Well, if it got to the point
themselves?
where like a lot of the chatter was like, this guy kind of sucks a little bit.
He seemed to have a very nice, loving family setup. He had a heartwarming.
I'm not saying it. I don't know anything about the man. I'm just saying it had reached a level that Charles Davis brought it up to a national audience seconds after he was taken. And then it was so important to Charles, CD, that he asked the man himself.
Yeah, the
if he was an a-hole.
The reporting hit a tipping point, and he had to, ask the question that needed to be asked. I get that. Do you want him to be? I don't want to be too friendly.
So my curiosity is piqued. Like, what is going on for that to be like a main storyline from one of the top college analysts seconds
Eric,
after?
can you put in a request for Jared Verse when we?
How
go
about
to
this? How
Rams
about I
training
get
camp?
what a great point, Dan. Give me a ding. Give me something. Nobody's asking these questions.
Well, Charles Davis is.
You got a bully for a ding. It's not worth it. He's handed out dings and grades points to Sessler. He's not even making points.
Why do you need to turn into this person during what has been a relatively well-natured show? You're asking for praise and sound clips and all this stuff. Can you get out of this show without endless praise? Can you get out of this show without endless praise aimed at you?
Do you know? Do you know?
I don't know. Seems absurd.
Do you know what you think I'm being right now?
You're being. No, well,
brought it back around.
I don't know if I'd go there.
I just brought it back around on you.
He did bring it back around. You gotta admit.
Oh my God!
All right, let's take a break
20.
and let's finish round one. All right, we're back. We are at pick 20. Let's hit the rest of the first round now. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they go to their offensive line, adding help there with Troy Fautanu from Washington. So interior, is that the first guard off the board? Interior lineman?
They're listing him that way, but he was fantastic at tackle and could be playing there. Like a lot of these offensive linemen, actually, Graham Barton coming up too, could play multiple positions. But I have a feeling they will try him at tackle. He's incredibly athletic.
PFF labeled him as the most versatile lineman of any of them. So that's multi-position, diverse, and the best overall athlete of all the linemen. It's saying he looked more like a tight end.
It's excellent to have the lineman that could play all over. Now the Dolphins, they go defense. They take Chop Robinson, edge out of Penn State, and that is a move. Some people thought, Greggy, maybe the Dolphins would take a burner and just go totally hog wild on their offense, but they do address their defense, which seems to make sense.
Well, I thought they might go
your guy
Newton there. Yeah. That was where it started to feel like this might not work out for me. It was a big need because Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, just bad luck, are coming off massive injuries. Both of them might not be ready for the start of the season, so you could be starting or certainly asking Chop Robinson to play a lot of snaps. Shaq Barrett is on that roster too. Quiet signing by them.
And they were like their pass rushing fell apart at the end of last season. I don't hate. I like the pick for them. I thought that like Chop Robinson was interesting to watch.
I thought Xavier Worthy there would have been
fascinating,
but he landed in a pretty fascinating place.
I thought it was weird in that you don't usually see this. I think it was Daniel Jeremiah who said that Chop Robinson, his nickname of Chop, is because of like the choppy steps he takes. He's known for like that's the way he kind of moves, and that's one of the things that perhaps they want to coach out of him. So you want to coach out the thing that his actual like his nickname.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't like that.
I didn't like that at all.
Old regular Steps Robinson. Yeah, that's troubling.
Anyway, let's move to the Eagles, who have done it again. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, as you heard it here first, that the Eagles won the draft night one with Quinion Mitchell out of Toledo, cornerback, high value, and I was seeing it everywhere, but let's call this one up. I saw this. Quinion Mitchell electrifies Eagles fans at number 22, heist of the 2024 NFL draft. So rest easy, everyone. The sheep are still herded together.
Oh, don't be so mad.
The old trope of guess what? All the smart people say the Eagles do everything right, so I will say that immediately on instinct, and then I'll be amongst the safe people.
Well, this bit must be. This is all in your head. This bit must be really resonating because after this pick, and I, of course, I complimented something about the Eagles. Everyone's like, "Is that going to be okay with Dan?" Hey, all we heard all week is like, "There's no chance Howie Roseman's sticking and picking.
He did
He's
it.
going to trade up and trade up." But Howie's so far ahead of the rest of the league, he knew somehow that he was going to have his pick of any cornerback in the draft, his number one need. So we think alike after all these podcasts together, Dan.
Yeah.
I also collected some reaction to the Eagles picks. We have a series of
I love it for the Eagles.
Tweets. Doug Farrar, what grade is higher than an A+? You need a higher than an A+. Let's go to the next one. I mean, there is nothing higher than an A+. Lindsey Rhodes, our great friend.
like
Must be
Lindsey.
fun to be an Eagles fan on draft day. Every pick just feels perfect. Always. No, what are you talking? We got one more. This was my favorite one. Howie can't keep getting away with this. From
I think Dan's point's been made.
Howie mother.
It's a perfect. It looks like a great pick. I'm just saying it is a good way. People in our industry tend to want to gravitate toward who are the thought leaders on social media, and they know that the Eagles are very popular amongst those people.
You're
Greg is kind of one of them.
it.
And so they'll just say, "Oh, let me immediately get my take out there."
My little keyboard.
Yeah, get my little keyboard out there. I'll get my take out there, and I'll align with the smart people.
Yeah.
And then people think I'm smart.
I think
Maybe
Dan.
just all these people have the same opinion. It happens all the time.
I think Dan is absolutely onto something. And then and Roseman got going early. They signed AJ Brown to a 3-year deal right after the Devontae Smith thing, which I thought cleared up what could have been an off-season, drama. Drama gone. Howie Roseman. What grade do you give that? A++.
A+++.
That was like a sneaky big contract. It was by far the biggest.
And they just gave a huge contract to a wide receiver.
$84 million guaranteed.
Yeah.
Right. At 32 a year in new money, which is easily the most, and we'll have to look at all the details and stuff, but this is setting the bar. I think these wide receiver contracts are going to get crazy. Everyone's trying to get in before Jefferson because the Amon-Ra St. Brown contract, we never hit that on the pod just because of timing, but both him and Penei Sewell got monster deals from the Lions. Classy move by the Lions. They give their stars huge contracts right before the draft, and then they bring them out to introduce the draft along with Megatron and Eminem.
Well done.
And
that should be a tradition, obviously.
Pretty good. Sense of the moment.
Every team that's hosting should do that with their legends because it's a great moment for them and the fans that are there for 10 hours. All kidding aside, I think it's a perfectly good pick for the Eagles. They do know what they're doing, and I think it left me. I felt a little bad, quite honestly, about. I don't want to be in a blood feud with Philadelphia because I don't have any issues with Philadelphia.
Apparently not.
I really don't.
Well, what about those Sixers-Knicks series going on?
That's great and that's fun. And the Sixers got off the mat tonight, so good job by them. But so there's I guess that's a rivalry. But I'm not a Mets fan, so like the Phillies don't bother me, and I'm not a Giants fan, contrary to popular belief by people who listen to the show. So I don't have an Eagles hatred. In fact, I'm going to share some things I like about Philadelphia.
Oh, wow.
Let's take a brief aside here. Hall & Oates. Love Hall & Oates. How about cheesesteaks with the cheese whiz? Mark can't wait till this is over.
Are both Hall and Oates? He's like, we're going to be here 5 more minutes.
I give them both. A lot of people say, oh, I only like Hall, not Oates.
No, but are
I like
they
them
both from Philly?
They're Philly. Yeah, they're Philly for real.
Is there a third item?
More, Mark.
Okay.
Randall Cunningham's 91-yard punt.
Love that.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Good.
Remember that?
I mean,
against the Giants.
How about that
your grandfather's team, but
how about like that 92-yard throw, that touchdown?
Love that too.
You know
and I love that move, the Superman dive in the end zone. Love it all. But the 91-yard punt is better. I like Bryce Harper. Speaking of the Phillies, he's a fun guy to watch. I like Questlove. I like The Roots. I got good songs. I like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. We're listening to it right now. The theme.
Yeah, I mean, that's a Hollywood product, but okay.
You know what I like? The Declaration of Independence, bitch.
That's American.
Where was the sign?
Near that cracked bell. I get it.
I like Silver Linings Playbook.
Okay.
Do you?
I do. I love that movie, actually. Even though Bradley Cooper's in it.
Yeah, I feel like that one of the main star you seem to dislike. But
I love several of the M. Night Shyamalan films.
Fine.
Several of them. And most of all, I love Colleen Wolfe. So
okay,
you put it all together, and it's not all bad. So I wanna make peace with Philly. If you want, we could bury the hatchet here tonight.
I think Greg and I are watching you evolve before our eyes on this episode of the podcast.
If you watch us on YouTube, you should check that out. We'll have it up. You'll see Brian Baldinger was there with Colleen, also from Philly. Right?
Yeah,
lives in Philly. But I did notice you didn't mention Gonzo.
Oh, I love Gonzo. John?
I think it goes without saying.
I mean, I could sit here all day just naming every person I've ever met from
Well, right, but he's the husband of the woman you just...
This is very... It's very Greg, but yes, John too.
Okay, good. Didn't want to leave him out.
Greg's like, let me not get out of this segment without some feud being created between you and someone's husband.
All right, let's move on. The Jacksonville Jaguars.
Oh, I love this one.
This one, this is via a trade with Minnesota through Cleveland from Houston. Take Brian Thomas, the wide receiver out of LSU. And the writing, this would have been, I feel like, an easy sandwich, Greg, if anybody threw it out there, because they badly wanted Calvin Ridley back, and they thought it was in the bag, and then they ended up losing him because another team blew him out of the water. So now they replaced Calvin Ridley, and that was a need.
If a different team made this trade, everyone would be like, oh, they did it again. Like Trent Baalke played the board perfectly. This is not typically what the Jaguars did, but they were at 17 overall, where I thought Brian Thomas Jr. would have or could have been the pick there. They also could have taken a cornerback, certainly. But I thought I love Thomas. People just don't move like him. He reminds me a little bit of DK Metcalf, just in the not like he's as big as physical. He's more of just a burner and smooth, but just like he has one skill set that is just so exceptional that he can learn the rest as they go. And so they moved back 6 spots. They got all those picks we talked about that the Vikings gave up, a third and a fourth next year. And I think really added some juice to that offense. That is a speedy offense with ETN, Gabe Davis, and Brian Thomas.
And, I mean, if you look at their wideout room, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Gabe Davis, and Evan Ingram at tight end, like this is
fast.
There's a lot going on here in terms of, speed, downfield speed, and Thomas is a deep ball threat.
Did you guys see the Jaguars war room at this time?
Yes, that was good.
Pretty tough. Tony Khan, who's been on the show, he's the son of Shad Khan, and he's a big figure, obviously with the Jaguars, and I believe he owns a wrestling.
Yeah, he was like
all elite wrestling.
I believe this in the past couple days was body slammed.
Do we have this
a wrestling event?
He got pilot driven.
Yeah.
Into the ground. And listen, wrestling is scripted, but the guys take real bumps, and Tony Khan takes a bump that requires him to wear a neck brace. And I just have like a take here. Neck braces in general, they're rough. Like no one looks good in a neck brace. There's something truly vulnerable about being stuck in a neck brace. The way you're like stiff and you have no range of, you're like Michael Keaton in the first Batman. Like you can't move.
Yeah.
And your just eyes are darting around. You just don't look very good. It's tough, bad beat.
Come on.
Well, how do you have a contrarian take about neck braces?
Because it's Kate. What do they call it? K-Fab or what? Like he's playing it up. It's a wink to the whole wrestling community.
Yeah,
of course. It's a bit.
He got. No.
It's wrestling. He's
banged,
making it real. He's making it real.
I would say
everyone loved it.
He did seem to have full motion in
he
the
was
neck.
struggling with his range of motion.
I mean,
are you telling me that people don't get injured in wrestling?
Of course they do, but I follow, I guess, enough wrestling fans on Twitter that were just going nuts that like he took it this far that they were like. Basically, people were begging and hoping he would wear the neck brace to the thing because he's not really hurt, and he did it. He extended it.
Your point, though,
and he did it last night.
No one would do such a thing.
He did it last night on national TV to set it up. He's one step ahead of you. He's promoting the
his injury is one step ahead of the draft. I think he wants to be on national television in a neck brace.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's. I think it's a bit of a.
We're talking about it.
It's an act.
Yes.
I'm just saying it's tough.
You're not wrong about the look. The neck brace.
Have you ever watched wrestling in your life?
Yeah, you watched.
Injuries happen.
Kid.
Injuries happen.
I know, but in this case,
how can you be so sure?
Because
how can you be so sure?
Because he owns the company and they set it up. That's
it
what
happens.
You do.
He was he actually pile driven?
Yes, and then
Is it possible he could have hurt his neck taking the pile driver?
You'd have to say it's possible.
I will defer to all the wrestling enthusiasts that are into it night after night, who all acknowledged and embraced that he's having some fun here.
I love that Gregg, like on any pocket of Twitter, Gregg is one of the largest followers of every pocket on Twitter.
I'm just saying, Dan's got a terrible take.
Gregg has never
someone's got to call him out.
Gregg has never mentioned wrestling once on this show, but he is also one of the largest Twitter followers of wrestling fanatics there is, apparently.
Breaking news, Gregg knows everything.
But there's no question you're wrong in this case.
No question. It's impossible.
Wait, what's breaking news?
That yeah. That you're wrong?
Oh.
That's impossible.
No. All the time. But in this case, you're wrong.
But how do you know? I'm just curious, like you must know.
Because it's... when this happened, I sort of was like, he did it. Like that's an amazing marketing bit that you set up.
It is good marketing because it does
set up your national TV appearance the night before.
I think he turned, put it this way, I think he turned lemons into lemonade. I think he got dinged in a big spot.
I think you're
all right.
Trying to save.
Amarius Mims is like, could they have spent 7 minutes on the greatest day of my adulthood?
The Lions, via trade with the Dallas Cowboys, take Terry Arnold, the cornerback out of Alabama. The Packers take offensive tackle Jordan Morgan out of Arizona. The Bucks select Graham Barton, tackle out of Duke, a center that apparently the Cowboys wanted a piece of and don't get him. And the Cardinals, via the Houston Texans, they had that extra first-round pick from their trade last year, take Darius Robinson, defensive end, out of Missouri. Thoughts?
I think for Detroit, they were fortunate, as were a number of teams, that the cornerback run came late.
Mm-hmm.
That this really was sort of the final position that Detroit needed to address. And Terry Arnold falls into your lap. He's from Alabama. He can play. And you added Carlton Davis in the offseason. You've got Brian Branch. Suddenly it looks like a strength. If Arnold works out, you've got a strength.
He was probably the safest cornerback in the draft just because he's from Alabama. He's a Lions type of guy. And then to see him come out and the crowd just go crazy for him, and he was like ready for that moment and like embraced it and said, I'm home.
I just want to say, Detroit, look out. Y'all got to start, man. Hey, I'm home, man. I'm home.
That's awesome.
Well,
How fun.
I dig that.
How fun. Great job. Number 28, the Kansas City Chiefs.
Woo.
They move up. They trade up. They trade up for a wide receiver. Does that sound familiar? We'll talk about it on Saturday. And they take Xavier Worthy. And there's a lot of reasons to be excited about this pick because that is the same Xavier Worthy that ran a 4.21 at the Combine, setting the record at that event for speed. He's undersized, Marc Sessler. However, the Chiefs have been missing this element of their offense since Tyreek Hill was traded, and we will not go into a new season in Kansas City being like they haven't added something new and exciting. This, whether it works or not, whether his as an undersized receiver, he's able to translate at 165 pounds, $165. We'll see. But this is an exciting idea.
Yes, they went for it, and he's getting Deshaun Jackson comps, and you added Hollywood Brown. So they've addressed it. And I think one of the more fascinating, for me, unpredictable turns in this draft post Penix Jr. is that the Bills allowed the Chiefs to trade into their spot when they also needed a wide receiver, and we'll get to what they didn't do later, but the Chiefs of all teams to trade with allowed to come into that space and take a guy that amps up their offense. I don't know. You know what? Just because it's the Bills, I guess it could have been anyone. It just seems to me if you're a Bills fan, you're like, excuse me, you did what? Where? Now? Today? With the Chiefs?
Well, let's ask Eric, the producer. Eric, where you at?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those situations. You don't do it with the Chiefs. They might as well be in your division. It's like
it's even worse.
I
think it's worse.
Yeah, that's true.
It's worse.
Actually, yeah, I mean, the Jets haven't ripped our heart out, every year. For
No,
the last
like
few
they're
years,
the ones that won't let you go to the Super Bowl.
You're on the blacklist.
Yeah,
and then you give them, a speedster that we're probably gonna give you Tyreek Hill flashbacks, and then like Mark alluded to, they, eventually trade themselves out of the first round entirely and don't address anything, and it was a weird day.
I hear that, but like if the value was good, and it didn't get that much actually, they just got a move up from the 3rd to the 4th, and it's like 27 straight teams didn't want Xavier Worthy. The Bills didn't want Xavier Worthy.
Can I argue?
Maybe Xavier Worthy would have felt like 2 or 3 more picks. I think it'll be a good pick.
One argument though, Greg, because the way it turns out, and the Bills will pick, first from all, 2 more wide receivers went off the board before they'll pick again. So it's not just about Xavier Worthy.
But maybe they.
If you're a Bills fan, you're like, what are we the AFC's Cowboys this offseason?
But there are
what
a
are we
million
doing?
more. Like A.D. Mitchell, who was a lot of people's wide receiver 4 or 5, is still there and was commonly mocked to the Bills, including, I think, by you, Mark, because I think that was the one pick you and Walker had the same. And they could still take him there at 33. I do think Worthy, though, is going to end up being a big part of our lives because he's with the Chiefs. And he's not John Ross. He's not Henry Ruggs to me. Like, he's a great route runner. Like, he has real, like, lateral movement skills. Now, can he survive like at that weight? That is a larger question, but he was on a team with another guy who's going to get taken very early tomorrow, A.D. Mitchell, and like Xavier Worthy was clearly the one, and his speed just sort of made defenses have to approach them completely different, and so I think he's going to be a weapon.
The Dallas Cowboys at pick 29, they want to make that splash this season, but it just nothing seems to be going their way. They do end up with Tyler Guyton, who is a very big, very physical, very fast, and athletically gifted tackle prospect out of Oklahoma. But another guy like Mims, that we were talking about, only 15 college starts. He's seen as a raw prospect, and for a team that's very much all in now, there's a little bit of a gamble here that can you get him up to speed and have him be a contributor right now, especially within a hole on the line after Tyron Smith.
Now, supposedly they really wanted a tackle, and Graham Barton was a tackle in college, but some people see him more as a center, interior lineman in the pros. But like that was like our guy Nate Tice, one of his very favorite players in the draft, thought he's being way overlooked, like a top 15 player, just going to be as safe a pick as you could possibly have, a guy that can play right away. And they end up trading out of that pick when people thought they might take him, maybe hoping he'd fall to 29. And instead they get a guy who kind of looks like a project, and they need guys to play right away. And Guyton is supposed to be one of those guys that might need a year or two to develop.
I like what the Cardinals did too, by the way, Darius Robinson. But I go back to Graham Barton. I think Graham Barton is, the Bucs took him, is one of the more intriguing linemen in this entire draft. And we talked about him a couple shows ago, can play all over the place. I think that's a steal for the Bucs. I thought he was going to go to Philadelphia if they didn't go cornerback.
Jason Light's been sneaky good remaking their offensive line, and the picks don't always look good like the first year. Like Gadecki didn't look great the first year, then it looks pretty good a year or two later. He's done a nice job.
The Ravens take Nate Wiggins, the cornerback out of Clemson. The Niners take Ricky Pearsall, the wide receiver out of Florida. That sounds very spicy potentially in that offense, and more questions about what's the future in that wide receiver room. because you're just adding another big-time player or a first-round pick, and you already have Deebo Samuel there. Still obviously have Brandon Ayuk there. There's still room for them all, Greggy, but just something to keep an eye on. And the Panthers then, they have the first pick of the second round, but they say, no, we want to get into the first round. So they trade with the Bills, who trade out of the first round entirely. And they take Xavier Legette, wide receiver out of South Carolina. The final wide receiver taken. Tons of wide receivers, 7 in the first round. Thoughts?
Well, the Pearsall pick I was really keeping an eye on when that went on the board, because earlier in the day, Tom Curran put out there on one of his shows just talking that the Patriots have been working on an Ayuk trade. That it's not definitive, but when the 49ers get on the board, keep an eye. If they take a wide receiver, then we might be talking a lot on Friday whether the Patriots end up trading that number 34 overall pick. They have the number 2 pick in the second round as part of a Brandon Ayuk trade. John Lynch, laughed it off a little bit. They asked him about it at a press conference Thursday night, saying, why are we always the ones that people are talking about with trades, which is not a denial. And it wasn't as specific, but Mike Silver and Diane Rossini separately reported on Thursday that the 49ers had been offering Ayuk and or Deebo Samuel in different trades. They said maybe trying to get way up in the draft, like trying to get to the top 10. That clearly didn't happen. That was before the draft, but it really makes it sound like they're open to trading Ayuk. If the Patriots could get that, do that, please.
I thought that it certainly seems strong that they were trying to get up into the first round to make a move to get a different type of wide receiver somewhere else if they're going to trade one of those guys. But throwing Deebo in there, that kind of threw me for a loop. That they're both available. I don't think they're both available, but
right,
one or the other is available.
That is pretty wild, and that would be a salary cap is a real trade if they traded Ayuk for the 32nd or the 34th overall pick that they thought whoever was on the board would be worth it. Pearsall's more of like a vertical slot guy. Got a lot of pop from Harmon on our wide receiver.
He sure did.
He's also he's a 24-year-old rookie, but I don't, again, get him for 4 years.
Well, college football, and now it's going to kind of end, is so weird with the COVID year thing.
Right.
You got a lot of older rookies.
Jaden Daniels was once throwing to Ricky Pearsall at Arizona State. Okay, that's not that crazy.
Sure.
And Brandon Ayuk.
Right.
It's like, what? Brandon Ayuk's been in the NFL, it feels like, for a long time. Jaden Daniels was throwing to, I don't know. What's going on?
And also Steve Smith Sr. He threw to him too.
And none of them on the team that you associate them with. It was Herm Edwards' Arizona State team.
All right, there you go. That's the first 32. Why don't we check in, Mark? You had your Marc Sessler mock draft. What were the results? Let's bring it up. What do we got here? All right, so you went 3 for 3 out of the gate. I think pretty much everybody did. You got Bo Nix to the Broncos.
Nice. You had him at 27, just for everyone listening. We also have the
and he
board
went
up on
12,
YouTube.
I believe. But we're giving you that, obviously. And
Neighbors, Giants.
Malik Neighbors to the New York.
And also, we got the Saints pick there.
Oh, you got Talise Fuaga to the Saints.
That's a good one.
Nice.
But overall, humdrum. Let's be honest, sort of a failure.
So you got
not up to my standards.
1, 2, 3. You got 5 out of 32. Is that correct?
6. Because you got J.J. McCarthy. It was a later pick, but that counts. Oh,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I see what you guys are trying to do. 7. 4 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 7. 7.
Wait, I still don't see the 7.
Because you're colorblind.
Yeah.
I'm not making fun of you. You told us that. But the one in the middle, the Saints one, looks like the other ones because it's Saints colors. But it's like
I got that.
The
but
top
there's
4. Then the
one,
Giants.
then
That's 5. Then in the middle column,
okay, yeah.
that's the Saints. That's number 6. And the bright orange Broncos, Bo Nix is 7.
This is great
For
podcast.
2025, can we keep in mind that one of the hosts is colorblind?
That was not
Tough
the issue.
cinch.
Just a tough addition.
So 7 out of 32. I feel like that's probably around industry average, I would guess.
I mean, I think some stuff, I had also, for the show, and it's not, if I had to with a gun to my head, I had 18 trades in the first round, and a lot of that stuff just did not happen.
I thought Mark was going to sneak in one with Buffalo with Mitchell in the last couple picks. I thought he was going to sneak in one more.
Yeah, but the Bills are we're determined to win 6 games next season.
They ruined my niece's night. She watched the draft for the first time. New Buffalo fan, or to understand what's going on.
Well, they're giving her a heads up of what to expect over the next 80
all
years.
night. Got a video. Of
Also,
her
you
being very upset.
taped it Wednesday. It's pretty early, relatively early on. There's some, last minute reporting that you probably would have changed.
It's kind of cheating the people that put out the mock draft after the last second reporting.
Yeah, and I refuse to do that. I don't see a lot of integrity there.
And you know what? You absolutely destroyed my son Walker Rosenthal. I mean,
like on the tennis courts.
How did he
children.
do? That wasn't my main goal, but how did he do?
He could
nice
not have done
side
worse.
victory.
It's kind of chicken scratches. I love that he's so committed to his mock draft. He would not let me take it in or even write on it, but I did take a picture and highlight. He got two picks right. He got Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison right, and that's it. Now he made this 2 weeks ago, so that was especially early.
Wait, he should have done a 2.0.
He didn't.
Sure.
He didn't want
I'm
to.
surprised he didn't want to. He loves this stuff.
Well, he
He's your
was
little
doing.
Maranovich.
He was doing mock draft simulators just on like websites over and over repeatedly, but that was his one.
Not a lot of 9-year-olds are getting any of these rights, so kudos to
Maybe this. I think you can, and I'm sure you did let him know because he did disappoint you. I know on this, but that doing a final mock draft 2 weeks before is putting you way behind the 8 ball.
That's a good point.
When your competitor did it the day before the draft.
I admired tonight. He was taking notes and he was writing all the picks as they were happening. He
loves it.
Thoughts,
He is.
I enjoyed it.
A certified young super fan. That's what the NFL craves.
They are craving what he's offering.
All right. We hope you craved what we had to offer on today's episode. We will be back on Saturday. So Friday, we're going to let it all soak in round 2 and 3. And then Saturday, 4, 5, 6, 7, we will be recording that afternoon here from Los Angeles and have something up for you shortly after the draft wraps up. And that's it. That's it. That's a good rundown of round 1, I feel like.
I'd agree.
What we needed to do.
Yeah.
Someone's got to take our guy Cooper DeJean. Whatever happened to him?
He's going tomorrow. Till tomorrow. Heed the call.